I've got a serious question for the Tale of Two Singles girls.
Okay, wait, we haven't actually started the show yet, so...
I know, that's what I'm telling you.
Oh, okay.
As the host of the show, there may come a moment where you want to ask a serious question, and I've got a serious question.
I feel nervous about that.
That is totally appropriate.
Wow.
I guess that's perfect. All right, welcome
to... That serious. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Let's try that again. Everyone be quiet. Say
Shut the fuck up.
I think we found our cold open, lads.
Son of a... Welcome to Beer Christianity. My name is John T.
I'm Drabs.
And I'm Laura.
And we are your hosts for this here episode, all about singleness, all the single ladies, and dating, and all sorts of cool stuff. And this is a really, really exciting episode because we are talking to hosts of another podcast, friends of ours. We've actually had a number of approaches, and by a number, I mean one, which is in fact a number of approaches from other podcasts who are like, hey, do you want to do like a crossover episode? We can cross-promote each other. And it was when we just started, and we got one from another Christian podcast. And we're like, oh, that's really awesome. Wrote back to them. But I think by the time I had written back to them, they had listened to the podcast. And they have not responded, it has to be said. So guys, if you're out there, that's heartbreaking and boo. But basically, yeah, this is Beer Christianity. You can find all of our stuff on beerchristianity.libsyn.com. You can also find us on Twitter at BeerXianity, and we're on Yahoo at beerchristianity@yahoo.com as well. And you can find us on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and even YouTube, though literally no idea if anybody's watched us on YouTube. But I hope so. You know, this rings eternal. But yeah, you guys, I would like you to introduce yourselves and to say a little bit about your podcast, because it's my favorite new podcast that has come out really, really recently. Full disclosure, I already know Sarah, who is one of the hosts. But yeah, it's a really great podcast. So Sarah, do you want to say hi and, I don't know, say something about the podcast? And then Geraldine, you can go for it as well.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sarah. Along with Geraldine, we have a podcast called A Tale of Two Singles, which is on SoundCloud and Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Oh, wait.
They're the same thing, right?
Not iTunes.
Yeah, it's one and the same. And you can email us too.
How do you get on both iTunes and Apple Podcasts? That's incredible.
I'm so impressed. I've got connections, man.
Geraldine, you can introduce us better.
Okay, so I'm Geraldine, and I'm the other co-host, creator of A Tale of Two Singles with Sarah. And I have to admit that I am a severe weak link in the duo of me and Sarah in this. I just turn up and talk during the podcast, and Sarah has done all of the legwork, so I feel like that should just be highlighted and commended.
But as everyone can hear, you do have this superior voice. So
sorry, Laura.
I'm loving the parallels of one host doing all the legwork and the others just like turning up for the chat. Like, Drabs, I feel like we can jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, Geraldine, Laura, and Drabs, you all have a nice drink while Sarah and myself just plan how we're going to be editing every episode from now until eternity. It's going to be fantastic. Guys, thanks so much for joining Beer Christianity. If you listen to our recommendations podcast all about the coronavirus 19 or the COVID-19 recommendations, Tale of Two Singles was my podcast recommendation. You guys had just had one episode at that point. How did that episode do? He asks through gritted teeth, already annoyed at the answer.
I think it did all right.
Yeah, I think we've had nearly 250 listens, so we're happy about that.
Basically, you got to a level on your first episode on the first day that it took our our first episode, about 2.5 months to get to, which was just enraging in terms of listens. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think anything about our sweary, boozy Christian podcast should make us not mainstream attractive. But yeah, that's fine. Everything is cool. Okay, opening question. No, wait, before we even get there, where can people find it? What's the address for your podcast?
Yeah, so if you go to soundcloud.com/A Tale of Two Singles, that's where we are. And then from there, you can find us in the other places. Or if you're on Instagram, A Tale of Two Singles.
Yeah, we are
you can
now on
find us there.
Instagram as well.
Nice, very good. Why did you start the podcast?
Yeah, why did we start the podcast? We were messaging earlier to be like, why did we start the podcast? What was the beginning of it? And I think the one thing that we both remembered was Istanbul. That was where the dream really became alive. Well, it didn't become alive, that's where it started, right?
We basically were like, oh, you know what would be cool if we started a documentary and we traveled all around the world and like interviewed people about these issues, these big issues in life that we need to deal with.
Yeah.
And then we scaled it back and we were like, instead, let's do a podcast about ourselves.
Yeah, I know. We went from this big arching dream to let's talk about ourselves instead.
So this
if we get traction, the documentary could become
it could become something.
But for now, it's just a monument to low ambitions, is what we're saying.
Hey, we got a lot of hits.
You did get a lot of hits, and you kicked our ass. Actually, it's very annoying. I'm never going to get over that, I think, actually. Can you tell us a little bit about the format of every episode?
Okay, so what do we do? So we always do like a nice check-in with each other, highlights of what's happened, which has become, more challenging as we're further into lockdown. As the interesting things decrease or just become more mundane, right? So we start off with something like that, and then we do a myth. So we've been trying to address like different myths around being single and what that means and what different people experience or view that. So then we try and tackle that and just have a discussion about how maybe we don't agree with that or maybe you do agree. And then we have a section called Tinderella, which is great fun. Although in the first episode, people thought we were trying to sell each other for dates.
Which we
not
weren't.
just dates.
Which we were not trying to do.
That section is all about like, we feel like there's a lot of negativity about single people and like, oh, people are single because they've got some like inherent flaw. So we're just trying to bring some positivity and be like, actually, we can be great and be single too.
Yeah.
And then we do a courting chaos story. So like just a dating story that's gone terribly wrong, either from ourselves or an audience. Or well, you're holding out for them to go well, but they've all gone wrong so far.
So far.
Nobody wants to hear dating stories that went well. No one's interested in that. Also, you're selling yourself short about like, oh, we check in, there's nothing to talk about. Your opening episode, you went straight to difficult periods.
That was such an accident.
You've since had like home leg waxing. It's been very good. It's been excellent.
Yeah, we're trying to bring like positivity and laughter.
Yeah,
and in this time of lockdown, we feel like it's more needed than ever. But we also want to be realistic that sometimes life's just not great.
Yeah.
And you're inspired by a podcast called what is it called?
Shagged, Married, Annoyed.
Oh,
Two podcasts. First, obviously, Bare Christianity, and the other one was.
I really don't like saying the word, but shagged, married, annoyed. That's why I was hoping Geraldine was going to say it, but she didn't.
I know.
Sarah, don't worry. You can say married. It'll be fine. It burns. And because I remember talking to you guys about it, and you were seriously considering calling it Unshagged, Unmarried, and Still Annoyed.
Yeah.
Which I just love as a podcast title.
We didn't want to get sued.
Yeah, I know. Let's face it, it's quite big already, so it could have happened.
How have people been reacting? Have people been enjoying it? Like, what's the feedback been so far?
Positive. I think it's that like we've had a lot of really nice comments actually. A lot of people are finding it funny, which is great. Well, I hope it's great unless they're laughing at us rather than with us. But also what's actually been really encouraging is hearing about people who are not necessarily within our friendship circle. So like going beyond that and those people being like, actually, this is really interesting to hear and it's been really positive to hear other people in the same position talking about it and making it feel okay.
One guy who, well, one of us knows vaguely and one of us does not know at all, said that it was like the greatest insight into the mind of a Christian girl since people started posting Pinterest boards to Facebook. So I don't know if that was a compliment or an insult, but I took it as a compliment.
Yeah.
You should be putting that as a review on the site.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is spectacular. So a lot of the stuff that you deal with is to do with kind of the singledom myths and that sort of stuff. Is it difficult as a single woman in the church particularly? Do you think like single Christian women have a lot of expectations? And Laura's waving at the screen right now. A lot of specific difficulties in expectations?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the one single person in your podcast was nodding very animatedly, so clearly it's an issue.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know really. I think there's like a what's the word? A kind of, not a worship, but family is very central to the church, and people seem to think it's a bit strange if you're not married. And I think there's kind of that idea of like that's the ultimate goal.
I think it's more like people just don't know what to do with you. They don't know what category you fit into, because you've got like children's work, youth work, student work. Then you've got mums groups, dads groups, all of that. And then they're just like, oh, you're getting older and you're still single. We don't really know what to do with you. Can't keep you in the youth. Can't keep you in the 20s to 30s anymore. What are we going to do?
Actually, Laura, what do you're a single woman. Like, I'd love to carry on just talking about you instead of letting you speak. But I guess we must take the shackles off your hands and let you dance.
Yeah, like I fully agree. Like I think it's like really like I'm very happy with the podcast that you like. It's really good, and I think like it's really like we kind of made jokes about you talking about like the periods and stuff and leg waxing or whatever, but like it's so refreshing to hear like Christian single women just talking about normal things that happen to women. Like that's not something often you hear about in like just like talk about your period and stuff. Like not something that is like ever really like spoken about in church, like obviously not in church, but like among other Christian women. Like it still seems like a taboo thing, and like I don't know, I feel like there's half an expectation on Christian women to not be the same as non-Christian women, and it's like we still feel the same things and experience the same things as non-Christian women. So like it's really like refreshing for me to hear real things from Christian women. So like,
and you fancy the same policeman, you
in episode 2 about Geraldine just having a real how stressed about how there was this fit man in her place of work, and Sarah just being like not a problem in the charity sector. And I was like, I texted Sarah and I was like, that made me nearly spit my soup out in the
also
well done.
I just want to say on behalf of the unattractive people like me, but also the really attractive people like Drabs, I don't think that that's okay, and we will be filing a formal complaint with iTunes, obviously. The fake news.
Fake news.
I think that's that's a good thing, like a point that we're trying to also just show that Christian women are normal. Like some of my non-Christian friends have listened to it, and I know some of Geraldine's have too, and have like enjoyed it. And so I feel like it's also just helping to show that we're just normal people, not crazy Christian fundamentalists.
But you told the dolphin story to persuade them that you're not crazy.
That was just light relief.
So
Please don't say light relief.
I leave my friends to die as well for light relief.
So if you want to hear that story, it's on episode 1 or 2. I can't remember which. Episode 2 of A Tale of Two Singles, about Sarah leaving her friends to die and also vomiting on them in the sea in a really beautiful dolphin encounter. I find the normalness and the just you're not being weirdly Christian about it, but just being unapologetically Christian. And normal human beings who I find funny and find interesting. And it's definitely not a podcast just for women, though, because I found it genuinely laugh out loud hilarious and also quite interesting, just in terms of the stuff that you guys are facing and your perspectives on things like singleness. Why are you laughing?
Because I'm just remembering an idea that Geraldine has for a future podcast that made me laugh.
don't like that one out yet.
They'll have to keep listening and they'll know when it's happened.
Grabs, you had a question for the Tale of Two Singles women.
Yeah. So on your second episode, someone asked whether being single was something you're annoyed about or something that was aspirational, and you talked about seasons of life and one of the opportunities of singleness was to pursue career more. And I was really intrigued by the pressures you face around career, because one of the things that I've observed in the church is that when women are encouraged to say focus on a vocation as opposed to family, which frankly isn't often, but when it does happen, that pursuit of vocation often ends up with career sacrifice rather than career pursuit. And it strikes me that a lot of the role models who are held up of, oh, look when you can achieve if you're single, involve, it might be the classic example of the kind of missionary or something like that, or it might be someone active in the community, or it might be someone in maybe involved in the care sector or something like that. But it very rarely ends up with someone who's earning a lot of money. Now, not that the church should for a moment be encouraging people to pursue money as an end goal. Yeah,
what the hell kind of podcast do you think you're on, man?
But it just strikes me there is a male role model within the church who would be held up, who would be very successful in their career, in the business world, objectively quite successful, quite well off. And I would never see that, a female counterpart for that. And I just know a lot of women who have got to a certain stage in their career and then have, in their desire to please God, have given it up. And I see that more often among females than males. And I wonder if that's a pressure you feel within church. Now, you've both done quite well in terms of career stuff and all the rest of it. But I don't know, just any reflections on that?
Ooh. I just think that actually, I think there is more of like a kind of pressure to be willing to sacrifice what you can achieve and what you build up, perhaps. Equally, not necessarily just with church, but equally if like a family was to come along and you were to do that, there is more of a pressure, or it still feels like there's more of a pressure for the women to do that and to take on that role than the guys. But I think that there should be the space and the opportunity for women to do well in their careers and to use their careers well as a way of doing Christianity as well and being a witness in those things. And actually, let's climb to the highest point that we can as a witness of our faith as well and doing something well. And I don't think that we should necessarily have to feel the pressure to give that up, to go into something maybe more sacrificial to be honoring God, you know?
I think that's like, yeah, such an interesting question. And we were actually talking about one of the things we want to do in the podcast is like to celebrate big successes and celebrate like, I mean, not just single people, like people in general, but yeah, single people who've done really well and are like doing amazing things. Because I feel like you're totally right that that's not often the picture that's laid up. But actually, I know some single women who are like doing amazingly, have started businesses that are like super successful, but I don't think you often hear about them, and they're not the people who are placed as role models, but actually they are out there. But I don't know whether they feel that they can't fully put themselves out there as successful. Maybe we should get one of them on our podcast and then we can find out.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it would upset me to think that the church was in some way perpetuating the gender pay gap.
I mean, Sarah, you sacrificed a year of your life last year.
I know, I don't think I'm very qualified to speak into this.
And you went to Central Asia with a Christian development charity and did that. I mean, what was the motivation, or what was that like? Was it rewarding, or did it feel like you were wasting your time?
At the start, to be honest, it did feel a little bit like I was wasting my time. But then I think that's always the way when you're starting a new job, because you can't do everything that you were doing before. Like retrospectively, it was really good. I think I learned a lot, and I think I changed in lots of ways. And I don't think I'm ever going to be someone who's going to get paid a lot of money just because of the things that I love to do, and like my passions are much more for like social justice and kind of overseas stuff. So that doesn't really pay a lot of money, but I think it did make me more ambitious in some ways, because I've seen all of the opportunities that I had, all the education I had, and the people that I was working with literally will never get that chance, and was so thankful for like any little things that I could teach them from the courses that I'd got to do. And obviously I'm still starting out, there's loads of stuff I don't know, but actually I have the opportunity to keep learning, developing, and so when we have the opportunity, I think we should do that to be the top we can be, whether that's someone who's earning lots of money or whether that's just someone who's doing a good job but not.
And what was life like for single women where you were?
To be honest, a lot of the time when I was there, that's why it's so ironic that I'm doing a podcast about being single, because when I was there, I was like, wow, life would be so much easier if I was married, because we were often on lockdown and it would just have been fun to have someone around who I just liked and wanted to hang out with me all the time. I lived with someone that I really liked, but not for the whole time. And we're quite different, and like she likes lots of time on her own, so she didn't want me to always be hanging around her, which was totally acceptable. I accept that. I also lived with a crazy dog, but I didn't really want to hang out with him either. So in that way, I did think, yeah, it would be nice to be married. But then towards the end, I had such a great community of single women there from all over the world who honestly are some of the most amazing people I've ever met, some of whom have been there for, 10 years, more than that, and who are doing amazing work and who are actually able to build into people's lives in a way that is really hard if you're married, because, well, if you're married with children, if you're married without children, there is very difficult, because people constantly would ask you why you don't have a child, and like you have no status. But if you're married with children, then obviously there's a lot of different restrictions on your life, and it's not like you can just send your children to daycare or whatever. It's very different. So you have a lot of freedom as a single woman to do a lot of things. I obviously wasn't fluent in language or anything, so my ability to help was limited, but other single women are doing amazing things. And there's a lot of single women and very few single men. So the single women are doing something, but that's probably the fact that there's more of us.
Yeah, there are a lot more single women in the church than single men. How does that play out for women in the church generally? Asking the single women on this podcast right now.
I like just jumping in. Like, it makes me so fucking mad. like,
say what you really think,
so
Laura.
mad. Like, I've had like people that I like, people like who I know, Christian men who will like be like end their relationships like whatever reason, and within like 3 months will be just like dating another woman, and I'm like, bruh, you have no idea. Like, having like looked at like it's not that popular but Christian dating app Salt, that Sarah actually is the person who introduced me to the Christian app Salt, not because she was on it but because she had heard about it.
I put Geraldine on it, that's why I knew.
But having seen Salt from a woman's perspective, and then having seen it from a man's perspective, like the women on Salt are like incredible. The men on Salt are like, I'd say 75-25, like 75% shit, 25% vaguely okay.
So harsh, Laura. So harsh.
Like, am I wrong?
What is wrong with the men on Salt? I mean, not all the men. 25%. If you're listening to this and you're on Salt and you're finding that hurtful to your soul, Laura doesn't mean that. She means you're in the 25%. Don't worry about it. But the 75% that don't involve you.
Okay, for all of the, if there is any single man who is on Salt right now, I need you to find a female friend, or maybe a female relative, get them to look at your profile, and then they will tell you everything that is wrong with your profile, and then they will fix it, and things will be better for you.
Like, give us some of the main themes here, Laura. What do you know?
I mean, the worst thing I've seen is somebody who we know, a mutual friend, who will, I think, will love me for telling this story. We have seen somebody who posted a photo of their DBS check. It's a genuine thing. I am not joking.
Legit.
Somebody took a photo of their DBS check and put it on a dating app. This is what we have to put up with.
That's amazing. If that's
just to be clear,
I love that though.
For our American listeners, I don't think it was ironic. And a DBS check is this proves that I've never been arrested as a paedophile form.
Like, basically. It's something that you have to have in order to be able to work with children. And they put it on their Salt profile.
Maybe he just wanted you to know that you wanted to be a family man.
Yeah, great.
That's not the way. That's not the way to go about it, though, is it? Who is seeing like? Don't see DBS check and think like, "Oh, family man." You see DBS check and think, "There's a reason this man has had to show us he's got a DBS check." And I don't want to know what that reason is.
Okay, but why are men so terrible at this? Because I have helped you with your Salt profile, and I've helped another one of our female friends with her Salt profile, and frankly got great results. What is wrong with the men who are filling these things in? Because I am technically a man, and it seems fairly simple to me.
I don't know. It just feels like a lot of the time they're just like not reading what they're writing in, like, you know, proofread what you're putting in, and I just like post more than one photo, like,
maybe
you know.
they're panicking. It's a panic salt application.
But
Geraldine, I like you because you are being kind to these people who are in a very stressful situation. You're not calling 75% of them shit, which I think is nice. So, you know, I mean, that in itself, that
maybe Geraldine
niceness.
has more to add.
I don't know. I just feel like, so me and Sarah put together a profile for myself.
It was really banter, I have to say. It was great.
It was so bad though. We did it after several glasses of wine, thought we were hilarious, and got very poor results.
Look, if you want me to help you, I am great at this. I set one up for myself so that somebody could get extra benefits on salt. It was for you. Yeah. So I set myself up, and I was just chucking in things to make sure that I didn't waste anybody's time. So I had a picture of me as I actually look, which is not super feminine, it has to be said, but I called myself, I want to say Jessica or something, and I basically had a very strong communist transgender vibe, and I did all right. I got a lot of interest.
Wow.
It's also super weird seeing like the difference between how men and women interact on a Christian dating app as opposed to like a non-Christian dating app like Tinder, because like a man on Tinder is just swiping right. They are seeing a photo and just swiping, whereas a man on Soul is actually has choice. Like he's like being like, oh, okay, like I don't really like this girl's profile, I can like swipe left on her. For a woman on Soul, it's just swipe him. It's like this is all I'm gonna get. Like the pickings are poor. It's super, not great.
So aside from the dating apps, what's the dating scene like in the church currently? Like, I mean, Sarah, in the podcast, some allusion has been made to the fact that you could have 20 or 30 men chasing after you and would be completely oblivious to the fact. So
I have no idea. I can't answer this question. I also haven't been to a church for a really long time, so not because I'm a heathen, just because they closed.
I don't know what it's like. It's been a long. It feels like it's been a long time. It's only been a few weeks, but pretty slow at the minute for me.
I feel like I was kind of saying this. Like, there's a group of, I think, guys who will be very like flirty with lots of. But I think we were always the thing. We think it's like challenging for guys because there are so many more girls that, in a way, I feel like they want to like check out their options maybe, which I understand, but then it can lead to lots of people getting a bit confused about what's going on maybe. I don't know.
What are we drinking? Drabs looks like he's got very little left because he has... Drabs, what were you drinking? You're drinking a beer that would look like normal size in my hands. What is that?
This is a little stubby from Aldi. So I'm gonna go and get one more of these and some whiskey and
Excellent. And let's ask what the others are drinking. Lolo, are you on the traditional?
Of course.
Excellent. Laura's on her Jack and Coke. Geraldine, what are you drinking?
Wine with my dinner several hours ago.
We've all been there, Geraldine.
You know what this podcast is called, right? You're meant to be drinking. It's important.
I know, and it's here, right? But
okay, open it up. Oh, that's a great beer. I had that the other day. That Jaipur.
It's
great.
Open
it.
Just one beer. Come on, come on, Geraldine.
Like the absolute pressure.
You had to open it.
There it is. That's a beautiful thing. Cheers. Sarah, what you drinking?
I've got some white wine.
Excellent.
I love the running theme that none of us cares about alcohol.
I've been buying beers and actually talking about this more on the podcast that I'm buying them just because I like the cans. I mean, is that why you bought that Jaipur, or is it because you actually like it?
I actually like it, but I was also pulled to the art on it. I had another 3. Yeah. They're great. I love the art.
My friend Bruce tried her.
No way.
Yeah. So I lived with him for a few years. He was my best man, and he was a chemical engineer, and then decided to sack it all in. He decided he wanted to brew beer, so he got a job at is it the Thornbridge Brewery? Is that right? That brews Jaipur?
Yeah.
It is.
Your friend Bruce Jaipur. I had my friend Bruce Jaipur. I was like, there's a word missing.
My friend Bruce Jaipur. My friend Eric McEwen's. Yeah.
Got it. Sorry.
My friend Jack Daniels.
Hey. Drabs, do you have another question?
Yes. I do have another question. We haven't had a dating story off Sarah yet, and I really want to hear one.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I've got such limited material that I feel like I need to save it for the podcast.
Oh,
They are holding back so heavily. At the beginning of this, we were like, before we started recording, we were like, oh, hey, so, we're having you on our podcast, then you can have us on yours, right? And there was just this really long, awkward silence with them both going like, no, we're not putting you on our podcast. You people are animals.
To be fair, it does kind of ruin the format to change it from a tale of two singles to a tale of three singles and two men who've been married for too long to understand what it's like to be single.
Laura, let's hear your dating. What do you call it? Courting calamity, was that it?
Courting chaos. Well, they call it calamity. It's good too.
Courting calamity is way better.
Calamity is always bad, and Geraldine is holding out for something good.
I'm holding out for the positives.
Also, courting calamity is an actual saying, whereas courting chaos isn't.
Oh my word, I stand by it. Back off.
Yes, Laura, if you've got one, then maybe I can pretend it's mine.
Yeah, I'll please feel free to regurgitate on the podcast. I do have a few. I am still single, so none of my courting stories have ended in much other than chaos. So the one I had in mind was a guy. Let's call him Kevin. So Kevin and I met on Salt, and we started messaging on a Friday night, which means that I was at the pub and that Jonty started messaging for me, and then
this happens a lot.
Yeah, and by Sunday, he was like, do you want to meet up for a coffee? And I was like, yeah, okay, you know what?
I just want to put in the power of my communications and words. Just I'm charming. I'm a delight. That's what I want to say. Kevin could have done better than me.
Well, we will see. So so I was like, you know what? I'm going to put myself out there. Let's go on a date, shake things up. And he had recently moved to the country. And when I say recently moved to the country, he had moved to the country the previous Monday and didn't even have his green card yet. And was already less than a week in putting dates on Salt.
I love that.
So we went on a date. The date was quite nice, to be fair. This story, by the way, is I'm not angry about this. I'm genuinely impressed at the speed with which this man was on Salt. And he was sort of like, I've been looking for a church to go to, and I was thinking about going to a carol service, and we've been hanging out for an afternoon, and I'm not really the sort of person to hang out with strangers anyway. I'm just quite introverted and putting myself out of my comfort zone, so I was getting quite tired, and I was like, you know what, I've got a good friend who goes to a church, they've got a carol service tonight, I'll just hit you up, you've just moved to the country, you don't have many friends, I'll hook you up with her.
Maybe the word hook you up.
Yeah, hook you up. There was not a phrase that was used, I will say. I had a message from my friends the next day, and she was just had this message from Kevin being you're cute, by the way. And she was like, please bear in mind that we met because you literally went on a date with my friend earlier today, and he kind of backed down pretty quickly. And then she had a message from one of her friends a few days later being like, I've met this guy and we're going to go on a date. And it was Kevin, and he had met somebody else there. And I was like, wow, I am impressed.
Kevin is a hero.
I love
well
that.
done, Kevin. The story doesn't end there.
Oh.
We were kind of chatting. So this was before Christmas, and we had been kind of chatting on and off over Christmas, and then he's recently moved back to his country of origin. Had a message from the same friend who he called cute the other day, saying that another of her friends had a Skype date with a man called Kevin, and that they would be your friends. Well done, Kevin.
He's following your advice, Geraldine, to just
Just date.
He's
go on
putting
lots of
himself out
dates.
there at an impressive level.
Travis, what's your courting chaos? What's your worst date ever?
So I remember dating a lot around that time when sort of 15, 16, and
you look much younger than you are if you were dating in 15, 16. And I remember Starbucks had just opened in town, and I went to an all-boys school, and the girls' school was next door, and so it was
you'd kind of just notice that there was a girls' school next door, and the cool thing was you'd go and you'd take girls on dates to Starbucks. Two in particular stand out. One where just a nightmare where I'd arranged this date with this girl, and you send it, and you sort it all out over text, and you have to be quite efficient because back then texts cost 10p each. You try and explain that to kids today, they will not believe you.
It's a side note, this is how you know you're old. If you say the words kids today, you know you're old.
So setting up a date was expensive business.
You don't have a special VPN to get you special Indian call rates or something like that.
But I'd forgotten my wallet, and so I spent the day at school scrounging around the playground, telling my sob story to mates, trying to get them to chip in like 10p here so I could buy this gallon of coffee, right? And I showed up at Starbucks with about £1.17, which I'd scuffed together. Even back then, that didn't get you a whole lot at Starbucks, right? And I was I was so nervous, and I was trying to figure out a way of telling her, hey, you're going to need to buy the drinks on this date. But I just bottled it, and I bottled it until we actually got to the till, and he said, okay, that's going to be like £3.80, please. And at that time, I decided to confess. So I opened my mouth to say I forgot my wallet, but I only got as far as at which point she said, oh, thank you. So I put my £1.17 like on the counter, and she like looks at it and looks at me, and then like pulls out a purse and whatever else. So it didn't go well from there. But I think the next one in Starbucks, and they all blur a little bit, but like
player.
Like it was going really well, and whatever she'd ordered, she'd sprinkled that. I don't know if they still have it, but like the chocolate sprinkles on it. Do you know what I mean? And she like had that thing on the table and like sprinkled that on top.
Have you not been in a coffee shop since then?
I only drink black Americano. Come on. And so she probably had like a cappuccino. I think those were the drink of choice back then. And was sprinkling chocolate on it. But anyway, the conversation was going really well. And then she was talking about how much she loved the chocolate sprinkles, and how you never got chocolate sprinkles like this anywhere else, and you can buy in the supermarket. And then just looked across the table at me in like a kind of test and was like, will you steal it for me?
What audacity.
What do you do? But like straight away being led into a life of crime, like on this first date.
Excellent.
And I stepped up and I stole that chocolate sprinkles for that girl.
Oh,
so,
well done,
Yeah,
Brad.
Starbucks. You've heard it here first.
And how many kids do you guys have now?
Yeah.
Sarah or Geraldine, what's your worst date ever?
This wasn't actually a date, but I remembered it on my trip when I was in Tanzania with the dolphins. I had been previously in India, and I'd lost a lot of weight, so I was like really, really skinny, and then I'm just really white, so I just like stood out a lot, I think. And then one of my this guy called Marco, who I think is not listening, so it's okay, that's his real name. He like just really loved me, and like was always like coming up to me and talking to me. He gave me like this ebony bracelet and put it on my wrist, was like straight to your heart, like a classic like cheesy. I don't know what he was trying, but it obviously wasn't successful. Anyway, but then he invited us all for dinner, and I was going to say no because I didn't want to go and be pimped out for a free dinner. But my friend obviously was like, yes, we'll come for dinner. So then we end up going to his house, sitting in his like garden, and it was like sunny and lovely, having dinner. But it was like ugali, like African kind of rice porridge thing, and curry, and it was nice. But like the others had a normal size plate of food, and then I had like 3 portions worth of food because he was trying to like fatten me up because I was too skinny. I wasn't like beautiful for for anyone. I was too skinny for sure. And so anyway, I have this food and I like literally can't eat it, and I got like an anxiety stomach ache, so I literally could not eat it, and it was so stressful. And then he basically went to the bathroom. My friend had to do this crazy like chopping up thing to make it look like it had all gone, like some of it had been eaten because I hadn't eaten any of it, and it was just like really horrendously stressful. And I think we ended up throwing some of it like outside of the garden in a napkin because we didn't know what to do and I couldn't eat it, and it was just awful. And
That's fine. A lot of those places in Africa have too much food, so That's fine.
I felt like I was being
bad about that at all.
sold for a free meal, and it was awful. And obviously, thankfully, I never saw him.
man.
Well, I think I did see him for the next 2 days, but after that, I never saw him again. But that was awful.
I actually think we should go to Jonty first, because I don't know what my worst date ever is. I'm trying to think of something.
I think I've had. It's hard to choose which would be my worst date. I think honestly, it was when I was still very young, and it was a girl who I wasn't even sure really liked me because I was super, super shy and I couldn't really talk to girls. And she was the first girl I'd ever been on a date with. I was super excited, but don't look at me like that. I was really scared of girls. I was. And we had been phoning, and I'd been talking to her, and I really liked her, and she was really pretty. And I have no idea what her name was. Like not even a clue, but I remember what she looked like. And she was really cute. And her brother took us out on, because we were far too young to drive or anything like that, took us out to this bar and bought us drinks.
How old are we talking here?
I think I was about 16.
Okay.
Yeah. And at the same time, I may have gone on a few dates with someone else who I also really liked, and who who had been the first person I ever kissed. And so that's a big deal, when you're young, and well, it was for me anyway. And I so I was kind of feeling a little bit bad about the fact that I was dating both of these people, and so I was just like, okay, maybe I should stop leading this person on because I actually like the other one more, and I think I should go. But let's go for this thing anyway. So we go out. I have never at this point in my life been drunk. The older brother starts buying us drinks at what turns out to be a kind of karaoke night at a student bar. There's a lot of cheap drinks. We play coinage. It turns out he's done it before and I haven't. And I get really, really, really drunk. And what I had planned to do that night was to stay over at her house in like another room, like with her parents' house and, all that kind of stuff. And then my parents would come fetch me the next day so that we could go out and have like a proper evening of it. And the brother was going to drive us.
Just to be clear, you arranged with both sets of parents a sleepover on your first date.
Second date. I'm not saying I wasn't showing promise. I was just saying that I hadn't fully really got a hold of the thing. So I get completely mortared. We're standing outside. I imagine because she thinks we're going to make out. I'm terrible at closing anyway, so that was never going to happen unless she actually put her face on my face. There was no way I was going to kiss her. I was that nervous. And that into consent, ladies, because that's the kind of guy I am. Anyway, so hammered out of my tiny skull, I decide now is the time to tell her the truth. Not say tomorrow morning when I'm leaving her house. No. Let's tell her now when we're about to go to her house. So swaying and staggering, I'm like, I think we should just be friends. Her eyes tear up and she's like, yeah, I didn't want to be anything more than friends either. And I'm like, yeah, no, me neither. That's cool. So everything's fine then, right? She's like, yeah, that's fine. It was not fine. It has to be said. Went back to the house.
You still went back to the house?
Yeah. Which was on the other side of town and honestly further away from my house than we were. She had to undress me and put me to bed. I was that drunk. Yeah. And then in the morning, my parents came to pick me up, and nobody in the family who had been so friendly the previous time would speak to me, and she wouldn't speak to me, and it was fairly awkward. Is all I would say. That was a bad date. Bad date. Yeah.
That was a bad date.
Yeah, it was just poor planning, I think, is what that was. That's what it comes out. I'm not great with logistics. That's what it is. Geraldine, what about you?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I think probably one of the most ridiculous things I've ever done is on a family holiday. So I was probably like 13, 14 at this point in time or something. And I don't know where we were, but we were at some beach, like at some sort of resort, and I was being like all romantic and imaginary in my head, like getting like carried away with the story of it all, like imagining what could be, like, oh my word, this is going to be the love of my life. And there's this very attractive guy who was like in charge of the boat hiring things for the day or something. So I managed to convince my brother to be my wingman.
Amazing.
My younger brother to go and like hire this boat so that I could go and talk to this guy. Like, absolute worst decision ever. And like, he was chatting to me and I was just like, I think very taken aback by how good looking he was. So I clearly wasn't listening to anything he was saying. I was just staring at him. And then because I wasn't listening to him, did all of the opposite things that he asked me to be doing. So he was like, I already just like went up, gave him the money, just sat down in the boat, and we see like, you need to get out of the boat, and I was just like just nodding. My brother then like proceeds to like mock me hugely in front of this guy. He was wetting himself. I was then getting red and flustered. Just like, it was not a good ending. I can't remember what happened. I just remember being mortified, being embarrassed, thinking I had this like winning line with this beautiful man and then not being able to talk to him.
That is a terrible, terrible date.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure it's a date.
No, it wasn't even a date. Definitely not a date.
Yeah. And actually,
Sarah, a conversation.
Sarah, you said yours wasn't a date. Yours was a date. You just didn't want to be on it.
Well, it was me and the supposed date and my two friends. Is that a date?
Yeah, it could be a date.
Okay, then sure.
What's the most annoying thing that married folk in church say or do for yourselves as singles?
I think one of the most annoying things that I can think of right now is when people are like, oh, don't want marriage, it sucks. Like, that's just like, that's a really crap thing to say, because I'm like, oh, I feel bad for your husband or wife right now, and also like, just because you're finding it tough doesn't mean it always is tough. Like,
but is it okay to say like, marriage is great, but also, man, I miss being single sometimes? Like, is that all right, or is that discouraging as well?
Encouraging. I find it annoying when people are like, oh, well, you'll definitely get married. Because I'm like, A, are you God? Do you know that? And B, well, now, why would you say that? Because you literally don't know. It annoys me. Don't say stupid things.
Have you ever had that in like a prophetic sense? Because my sister got that one time. And,
she is married though, right?
Yeah, not to the dude. It was so. Sorry, but you're going to meet the man.
That sounds really weird. Does he sound really weird to you?
He does. It sounds like you're gargling with Darth Vader's essence.
Sorry, it's only because I feel like we want to hear this story.
That's much better. We can't hear you.
Yeah. My sister gets this like prophecy saying like, oh, you're going to meet the man you're going to marry this summer. And so, like, all summer long, she's searching for the man she's going to marry. And then she meets him. And on the one hand, he seems great initially. So they get engaged and set up the wedding and all the rest of it. But then it turns out he's a psycho.
Oh, no.
And they pull the plug on the wedding, like, just before. And she dodges an absolute bullet. There's no way she'd have got engaged if it wasn't for that.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, that is unhelpful.
What you're saying, Sarah, do you know what I mean? About like, oh, you're definitely getting married, because it's not great advice.
No.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully that's never happened to me.
I think this is just a thing in general. I don't think this is a specifically Christian thing. But when I so much as breathe in the direction of another man and everyone's like, oh, hello, and I'm like, it's so like, just because I'm talking to another man does not mean that I'm on the hunt to find. Like,
but it's not because you're single. It's because you have the hunger. No, I don't think so.
No, one time I was talking to someone at church who maybe I could be married to him now, but I was talking to him and then I could see him looking at something behind me, and then I turned around and it was like literally 3 of his friends being like, actually. And then I was like, I never spoke to him again because I was so embarrassed. Why would you do that? We were just having conversation.
Yeah.
Although also, you never spoke to him again because his friends were happy for him because he was clearly so keen to speak to. That's on you.
Wait, give me the context. I was visiting the church, so I didn't ever go back there again. But I never spoke to him again because obviously then I was really embarrassed, and so then ended the conversation. So then I never had his number or anything. I didn't like ignore him for years to come.
Okay. I hear he actually moved back to his home country and has been texting a lot of his friends. So you can get back in touch if you like. I think that's fine.
Yeah, just like, it's okay to just be friends with a man and not need to like look for anything further than that. Like, that's okay. And you
I
shouldn't
agree
pressure
with
your
that,
single friends
actually.
into trying to make relationships out of their friendships.
Yeah, I agree with that. We should be allowed to talk to people without people questioning our motives.
Or when you're single for a while and then everyone assumes you're a lesbian.
Yeah, literally. I've organised dates with men and like told my like family and been like, oh, I've got a date, and had my family message me and be like, what's their name? Genuinely something that's happened to me. Not joking.
That is a signal that you have been single maybe for a while. That is beautiful.
One other question that I had for the gals, and I mean, this may have already been answered by the fact that Sarah did not want to say the word shagged earlier, but I'd be really interested to see if you guys are gonna like touch on sex and stuff in like later episodes of the podcast, because like for me, I find it very annoying when people assume that single Christian women aren't like interested in sex, and like I would just be really interested to hear like your thoughts about that.
No, well, one of the other reasons why we didn't end up wanting to call it Unshagged, Unmarried, Still Annoyed, was because actually we didn't want there to be stigma around people who are Christians and have had sex and are not married, because actually like there's enough of that in the world without us doing that. And I'm sure Geraldine will be happy to answer further because she's less socially awkward.
Yeah, I think I really want to talk about that. When we were planning the podcast, I was like, we need to have a discussion about this and let's bring this into it. But I think it might take us having a few more conversations.
Hey, if you want to do a big Christianity crossover and want somebody who's slightly less socially awkward than Sarah,
So just to be clear, Laura's trying to muscle in on one of the co-hosts.
Should we just switch? I'll join Beer Christianity.
You do it. You switch them across. I honestly think that'd be amazing. Guys,
we will. It's important, so we will talk about it.
Yeah, we will.
Excellent. Guys, thank you so much for joining us and for being on the podcast, and also for making such a great podcast yourselves. If people want to get hold of A Tale of Two Singles, and they were a little bit dubious at the beginning, but now they've heard you, they're like, actually, no, these guys sound right. Remind them how they can find you.
So we are... I always look to you as if you're going to do it, but I know you're not. We're on soundcloud.com/A Tale of Two Singles. And we're also on Instagram at A Tale of Two Singles. And you can email us at ataleoftwosingles@gmail.com and find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well.
It's a little bit weird to have a Gmail address, hey, when like I think most podcasts have a Yahoo address. I think that's kind of a more professional way of doing it. So I don't want to tell you guys your business, but I guess you're starting out, so you'll eventually work up to a Yahoo.
If we get enough complaints, we'll change it.
I think that's what you should do. Cool. Thank you so much for listening to Beer Christianity. You can find us on beerchristianity.libsyn.com, or is it libsyn.beerchristianity.com? I can't remember. It's beerchristianity.libsyn.com, and you can find us on all the usual places. Do tune in again. Do also review us and rate us on Apple Podcasts, and pimp us out to your friends. We, unlike Sarah, are not ashamed to be sold for a bowl of rice. Okay, bye, and thanks for listening.
Bye.